Hey everyone, Kevin DeWalt, and I'm here with Jen Mendez and Chiara, and we are actually going to Jen's going to give us a little presentation today on how we can use being helpful as a business strategy to create a great business culture. And so you'll have this our first time doing this. You'll have to bear with us as we get the slides up on the screen here. I'll just say a couple quick words about Jen. Jen and I have known each other for, I guess, maybe 6 or 7 years now, worked together in a previous life, and now she is the founder of Permy Kids. And I'll let her probably resay this, because I'm going to butcher what her mission is. But my understanding is it's educating kids in how to have teaching kids how to have a responsible, environmentally responsible lifestyle, and teach them how to have responsibility. And a lot of that is through basically educating them yourself as a parent. Jen, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks, Kevin. I'm excited to be here. So feel free to jump in anytime with questions. And yeah, so I have recently started Permy Kids, and the whole idea is about building a community of people who want to empower their children to become learners and to see life through a solution, be able to see and utilize resources and patterns around them in a way that integrates everything, so that we are looking at learning and life as being one. And how we can do that as parents with very young children to start, and then how we can empower ourselves, first of all, because for a lot of people there is a concern of, I like this idea. I want to do more for my child, whether or not they're in a school already, or I want to do some sort of homeschooling or unschooling. I want to provide this sort of way of thinking, this way of seeing the world, but I don't know how, and I don't know where to start, and I don't know how to find a community, and so now what? And so anyway, with that, I started Permy Kids because I am doing that sort of learning approach with my children, and I thought maybe I could share what I'm doing. And by sharing, by sort of approaching this through an open source sort of methodology of, let me share what I'm doing, with the idea that I want you to take it, I want you to use it, I want you to build on it, I want you to tweak it, deconstruct it, reconstruct it, and then share back with all of us. And so that, what I end up getting back will help me actually improve what I'm doing with my kids. And so we can have that sort of give and take. So that's where we're at. And we're early in our founding. So the community is really just starting to come together, and we've got some exciting times. But one of the things I wanted to come and talk to you about, and to anyone else who's interested, is the idea of how do you infuse helpfulness business, right? And instead of looking at how can I inject it into a certain part in my business process, how can it actually be an underlying foundation to what I'm doing, and then how can that actually provide value to everyone who's involved with the business, which includes customers and much more, and also value back to the business, so that I can make the business sustainable, and then from sustainable I can make it into a growth, something that can actually grow and thrive, and how helpfulness can actually be an important piece of that that's often overlooked.
So I guess, Jen, the way I like to think of it is, when you read about companies like Zappos, or one that I used to work at, which was the Motley Fool, and where I guess the culture is kind of one that people respect and want to emulate. It just seems like most companies want to take a band-aid approach to this. Like, oh, Zappos has great customer service. Let's go there, visit Zappos and see their customer service. What they don't realize is there was 5 to 10 years of just foundation laying of how an organization becomes like that. You just can't go in and have the flavor of the week, put up a new sign, and do a little training. Go, okay, everybody, we're going to have great customer service today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I guess unless you guys have any other questions or anything to get prior, maybe I'll share some of the slides I put together, some of the talking points, and feel free to interject at any point and ask questions. Make this sort of a conversation, less of a presentation.
Sounds great to me. Rock on.
All right. And can you see the slides?
I cannot see them yet. Are they? I still see just your screen.
No problem. Give me a second here. I hit hang out and share, but when you live out in the country like I do, sometimes it doesn't want to take. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I think we got it
Looks
now.
like now.
Yep, that's it.
Okay. Again, I apologize. I am a little bit out in the country, and I have a satellite connection. So please shout if something is not showing up as quickly as I'm talking. That sort of thing. Just let me know if I need to slow down talking to meet the slides as you see them.
Yeah, it looks perfectly
All right,
clear
so
right now,
really
Jen.
what I want to talk about today, great. What I want to talk about today is this idea of doing less with more and designing a business to thrive, not just survive, but to thrive, and doing that through sort of this integrated ethical ethos that is grounded in helpfulness. And so my goal today is really to provide information to people, empower folks to feel like, you know what, I think I can do this. And I, I think that helpfulness really reaches into all parts of our business and our life. And so it allows you to actually, as it says, do less with more. And that is correct. It's not do more with less. It's do less with more. And if you think about it, it's kind of like time. If you see time as a scarcity, then you'll never have enough. It's always like, I've got to do more with less with time, right? But instead, if you prioritize priorities, then all of a sudden you don't have a time scarcity, because how you're choosing to spend your time is based on those priorities, and it's furthering your goals all the time. So you're actually doing less, but you are getting more as a result. And that's kind of the approach that I've taken with Permy Kids and injecting helpfulness is, doing less, but that each decision, every single action that I take actually utilizes sort of this interconnected nature business as an ecosystem. Even what you would consider, a one-man, lean startup business is an ecosystem. It's not a standalone. In fact, I would argue that there really is no such thing as a a one. You'll see why as we talk about some of the other slides. That's actually a myth. And what we have is an ecosystem. That if every decision we're taking is actually based on these interconnected ideas and how you can do one thing and have it have multiple effects for you, actually doing less but with more. And so you want to think of stacking functionality, which is, some vocabulary we'll come back to here as we talk a little bit more, so that everything you do has numerous interactions and many different paybacks, many different yields for you. So real quick, if you're watching this and you either have started some sort of business or you're just in the idea phase, I want you to just think about a couple of questions, because I think this will get us into a good mindset. And the first is, why do you want to be helpful? What is the underlying goal for you? Why is this something that you're considering? And then who or what is the focus of your efforts of helpfulness? And so for a lot of folks, we're thinking of I want to be helpful to my customers, and I want to do it because I want to gain customers or sales. That's a common answer, and that's an important piece, but it is only one piece of our business ecosystem. It is only one, what I call an edge. And an edge is simply where two things connect, right? And so where you connect with your customers is an edge. But where you connect with many other things in your business are also edges that you can use helpfulness to actually make more productive for you. And so if you think of, for example, a forest, and you're walking from an open field into a forest. Well, you can walk through the open field pretty easily. The grass might be, high, it's up to your knees, but you can walk through it, right? And if you're in the middle of a forest, you can walk through that forest pretty easily. But at the edge, where that field and the forest meet, you have a hard time getting through, because that is the area of the most potential productivity. That's where you're going to have all sorts of bushes that you have to step through, herbs growing, and just a variety of things that thrive on the edge. And when we're thinking of our business, we need to look at those edges, because that's where the most value can come for your business, and then for the other person or other thing that's on that edge. So just think a little bit about, okay, how are you approaching helpfulness? And then we'll go through this, and we'll come back to some of these questions as we move forward. So I want to talk a little bit about, what are we going to talk about? The idea of thrive, don't survive, and how do you optimize your business with this mentality of doing less but getting more out of every single action that you take or every single decision that you make. And how you can optimize this with a foundation of helpfulness, an ethical ethos foundation. I'm going to share a little bit about permaculture, ethics, and principles, which is the foundation for my business, but you'll quickly see that those ethics and principles can apply to any business, really. And many of them are direct links to what you think of when you think of lean startup, and what a lot of actions that people are taking in that community. And then what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about, what is value, what is wealth, because if you don't really understand in a bigger scale what wealth to your business is or what it can be, then putting it all together doesn't make sense. And we're doing things but only focused on one edge in that business, which is usually customers, and a very important edge, but there's so much more to it. So what I ask of anyone who's listening and interested in what's going on here is two things. One, I want you guys to challenge what I'm telling you. I want you to ask questions either of me, or take this and go back and ask questions about your own business. I want you to try things and then observe and interact, right? And figure out, does what she's saying make sense? Are these things actually there? So don't just take what I'm telling you and run with it. Take it and challenge it. Take these ideas, try some, and then see what actually comes back with the same results for you. And then the 1-to-2 approach. I'm really big on the idea that for everything that you learn, you should turn around and teach that to 2 more people. And if they each turn around and teach it to 2 more people, before you know it, some really great ideas are spreading. And so if you take anything out of this at all, please think about that 1-to-2 approach. Here's what I learned. Who can I share this with? Let me find at least 2 other folks so that I can continue spreading this idea, and we can continue testing it, really. So let me talk a little bit
Jen,
about the idea of optimizing. Yeah.
Yeah, quick question. So when you think about like the thicket you're talking about of the other people you help, so I guess what my mind starts going to is, okay, who else is out there? And like right away I think, okay, yeah, customers, obviously that's the obvious one, right? But then I guess it's like partners, suppliers, employees, competitors. So these are like all the other people that are out there in like the ecosystem. And the reason I'm saying is competitors is because I actually, as a company that I worked with in the past in the DC area, Matrix Partners, and the CEO was talking about, like, she puts on like basically training where people that are effectively competitors in the industry can come and learn how the business works and everything. And she was just telling me the value of doing that and the relationships she builds and how it ends up getting business from those through referrals or for whatever reason it ends up working better for her in the end. So I mean, I guess what I was asking is, are those the main categories that most people think about doing this, or is there something else?
No, you're right on the money when you are thinking about those other categories, and definitely including competitors. One of my goals in my business is actually to help create competitors. I want to provide information in a way that people feel so empowered they can take it and they can build on it and they can start doing something with it of value. Because again, this idea that the ideas that I put out there, and as well as they may work, can always be refined and built upon. And if you can do that, you can actually create a cooperative sort of community between you and competitors, a strategic sort of partnership that you have through information sharing, through a foundation of helpfulness that actually helps both or multiple businesses grow and thrive. So taking that approach, absolutely, and thinking about who's involved, but producers, also the people that you are, for example, if you have some sort of product that you are creating, your suppliers are part of the edges in your business just as much as your customers, just as much as if you have partners. And so you're right on when you are thinking about those other edges that exist in that ecosystem that are sometimes overlooked.
It's funny. So actually, just today, I was having a conversation with one of the people who's helping me out. Was so helpful, and we were talking about the fact that I was investing a lot of time in helping. It doesn't feel like a lot of time to me, but apparently to her, it felt like a lot of time in terms of helping her. So I don't want to say this person's name, but maybe just to come up with a name, let's just call her Chiara, just for the sake of it. And so for those who are watching, Chiara is actually on the call list now, and so. Char was asking me, basically, why are you spending all this time helping me? And I didn't like know how to have an exact answer, but it's just so hard today to get people to rally around you and believe in what you're doing, because there's so many people trying to jam stuff down our throats that it's one of the few ways you can actually give yourself an advantage over other options that smart people have is by really trying to help them out. So anyway, Char, maybe you want to speak up. Was that your reaction? I mean, when you saw this slide, were you thinking the same thing that I was?
Yeah. No, actually, I was a little. This is new to me, like what Jen is presenting.
So what you're saying is that I'm not helpful. What you're saying is that I'm not helpful. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, you are for sure helpful, but I mean, the concept of edges is just so new to me. So no, it didn't directly connect to what we were talking about today. I mean, I wasn't thinking of suppliers and contributors and stuff.
So what came to your mind when you thought about edges, Chiara? What came to your mind when Jen mentioned edges?
That just the fact that being helpful doesn't just need to be about your customers, and it could be you could leverage that to other parts of your business, but I don't know what. So I guess that's it.
You're waiting for the answer, in other words.
Yeah.
All right. We'll stop talking and let Jen talk now, since she knows
I
what
think
she's
you said
talking
something
about.
Sure, I think that you said something that's right on, Kevin, which is the idea that when you are helpful, not just at a single moment or a single place, but truly that is the foundation of you and that you are designing, that you help fill a want for people, and it's interesting because you really do want to focus on wants, which are sort of niches, right? And so by being helpful, by creating a business, or I should say, it's not creating actually. You don't actually create a business. You design a business. You're taking things that already exist, whether it's tangible or intangible, right? And you are putting it together in a new and innovative way. That you are designing this business based on helpfulness. You actually are providing, or you're seeing to people's desire for this niche of feeling like, you know what, I'm really being heard. and I'm part of something bigger than myself, and people start to, I mean, everything about their life, they start to look at and go, why is this not what's happening in other areas? Why is this not what's occurring with these other businesses I'm interacting with, or these other people in my life? And then how do I start bringing this to others? So you're absolutely right that when you are helpful, it provides that sort of unique niche that for a lot of, especially big businesses, don't exist. You know, they have branding, but they don't have that niche of, no, I really connect with you. And because you are as a customer, but again, as a supplier, as a, you know, as as and edges can even be not just people, but think beyond that. An edge is any way that you or your business intersects or meets with something else. So the website that you set up that people come to is an edge. People coming to it is an edge. That's where two things are coming together. So how can you integrate helpfulness into technology that you're using too, so that you are helping meet people's needs? Absolutely. It's such an interesting way to think about business. And actually, I've got a few slides coming up that will talk a little bit more, and I'll give some more concrete examples for folks about exactly how does this look, and what does it mean. But let me just say real quick that to give credit where credit is due, is that these ideas that I'm sharing today, I've taken and I've tweaked and I've extended for what I'm doing with PermaKids, but they come from ideas that originated from a gentleman named Bill Mollison, who is seen as sort of the grandfather of permaculture, the sort of the ethics and the principles of that is. David Holmgren, which is another sort of co-founder of the principles in particular. A gentleman named Ethan Rowland from Appleseed Permaculture, who came up with this idea of 8 forms of capital, which we'll talk about. And then Jack Spirko, who has really been an inspiration for me for my business. He's been a big supporter. He did a business podcast called where he talked about taking your passion and how do you make a business out of whatever your passion is. And so many of these ideas come from all 4 of those individuals. And the whole idea is that, to optimize, you want to think about a permanence and culture, and that's really all that permaculture. When I use that word, because people are like, "What on earth is permaculture?" Right? But the whole word is a combination between permanence and culture. So you want to think about, how do I design my business right from the beginning with the permanence of culture that I want to be part of, that I want to foster. What is that culture? What does it look like? And again, in my case, what does, or where does helpfulness play into that culture that I want to create? So when you think nation, and this, stop and think, am I designing with this idea in mind, or am I sort of just doing piece by piece? Am I taking all these segregated pieces and then trying to put them together to create a whole, instead of starting with the big picture in mind, and then so using the big picture patterns that exist with the culture that you want to create, and then using that. So think to yourself, ethics, what are your business ethics, where do those come into play in the culture that you want to create for your business? It's not just about giving people a product or service, it's about potentially building this culture that people want to be part of. And so you can think about, what do you already have? What do you need? And then where do those two intersect? How can you use what you already have to obtain what you need for your business? And that's where edges go sort of overlap, right? And you're creating that edge between what you already have, what you need, and actually that edge is where we can make the most difference. And you'll be surprised in your business, or even in your business idea, even before you're at a point of launching a business. If you're at a point of just meeting with customers and getting feedback or doing iterations, as we talk here about what value you already have in your business, and then how you can use that to just increase that, again, through this idea of connecting and helpfulness through edges. So everything I'm going to talk about is built on these ethics and principles of a permanence of culture. Now, permanence applied in nature to like people's, your own yard, right, is how people take these ethics and principles and they actually build, or design their landscaping to be sustainable, edible, maybe organic, maybe not, but some sort of, eco-friendly, right? So they're taking these things and they're doing stuff out in nature or on a whole farm, right? There's whole agricultural businesses out there that design and do everything they do based on these ethics and principles. But these ethics and principles apply to anything that you are doing, any sort of business, and I would argue actually anything in life. So, the idea that, does your business care for people? Does it care for the earth? Not in the sense that like you have to be super eco-friendly and, and that's piece, but and then the benefits you get, which is the third one there, return of surplus, right? So whatever yield, whatever you're getting out of your business, whether that be money, whether that be customers, whether that be relationships, so on and so forth, how are you using those things? Are you putting them back into the people and the environment, as far as making choices so that everyone knows that what you're doing is ethical? That's it. Again, you don't have to be, I'm a super eco-friendly business, but the choices that you make and the culture that then you present is, I'm not going to do anything that I know is going to be harmful to people or to the things around us, because if we are doing that, then for the people. And so just having this sort of mindset of my business and what I'm taking and how do I put that back into my business or bring back to these individuals, and it really, you do that through these principles. And so, when you think of these principles, it's so funny because as I look at them, I think about, again, a business ecosystem and a business ethos integrate into this greater ecosystem. So when I look at observe and interact, right? I mean, that's all that is in a startup or a business, is to know, your customers' wants and needs, and you observe and you interact. That's, what Kevin is doing, right? By being so helpful is you get to interact with people, you get to hear from them, you get to hear what's going on with their life, with their problems, and actually then inject that into what you are doing in your business, your product or your service. That's all observe and interact is. And then you take that and you go back and you say, let me make some changes. Let me bring it back out to folks. That whole iteration process of, instead of designing in secret, doing it in open, way where you are engaging with people. Action store. I know energy can be a lot of things, but it's not just, solar or wind or, oil. Work and effort is energy, right? So you need to think about the idea that energy, and as far as work and effort, can be represented in time. It can be represented in money, right? That's exchanged. Money is really just a form of energy. It's a symbol of an exchange of energy, and also emotions. And the idea that in your business, when you're thinking about helpfulness and you're thinking about catching this energy that exists, it's not just about catching. There's a time component, and there's also an emotional component for everyone who's involved. And, energy can be potential or kinetic, right? Just like in physics. So you have potential time, potential money, potential relationships, potential emotional, connections, as well as then activating those things. And then the idea of, obtain a yield is just simply getting something for what you are doing, information, building a relationship, whether it's capital, and so in a business, of course, you need to be, obtaining a yield. I mean, all these things are applied out in nature, but they make all the sense in the world to a business. Skipping down, we'll go to use and value resources, and that kind of gets the idea of edges a little bit. But there's one down the bottom that's specifically about it. But the idea of that you actually your customer, your supplier, your employees, the person that you contract to do your website or to do some sort of piece of your business are all resources, but in a positive way. And that you need to recognize what you actually have right now that you can utilize. Going down to the next one that's highlighted there, the idea to integrate versus segregate. I mean, that's the idea that you want to integrate and build feedback, input into your products and services, instead of having this sort of segregated outlook where again, people are injecting certain things with the end goal of just seeing value in monetary rewards that come back. And again, edges, which we talked a lot about, so I won't go into that one a whole lot more, but it's it's really about knowing all the people that are involved in your business and valuing what they have to offer, which sometimes gets over. Before I talk more on edges and like the different components of an edge in business and what that actually looks like, I want to talk real quick about value and wealth in your business and help you have and how you have certain things or have potential wealth that you aren't yet capitalizing on. And so when we think of these things, the first three I think most people are familiar with. Financial capital, right? When you think of capital, what do people think of? They think of money. In the US dollars, or whatever, whatever society in, they're the government-backed currency. Or financial also includes, of course, gold, for that matter, Bitcoin and that sort of thing now. So I think people understand financial pretty well. And when we're thinking about business, that's usually where people focus. So capital that are just as valuable and can. The whole thing about capital is that to be capital, it has to be something that you can take and convert into other forms of capital, so it's exchangeable, just like dollars can be exchanged for for rubles, right? Or for Bitcoin can be exchanged into whatever. Any sort of capital can be exchanged for another, and so that's one of the criteria of capital. And so as a result, you can be building these other types of capital in your business and then finding ways to convert them so that when you do want or need that financial, something like cultural capital into financial, what on earth would that look like? But that you recognize you have all this other value in your business that is there. The other one, material. A lot of people know and think of material capital already. And so material capital is just the idea that physical things. Usually you think of building and furniture, right? So people, when you start a business, you think of, I have capital as far as money I'm getting, and I have capital in the things that are owned by my business. But you also have material capital in non-physical things in your business. So non-physical things that can be owned by you or your business, transferred to other people, sold, or converted to other forms of capital. So non-physical material capital could be things like procedures that you've created or protocols that you've created that you have and you could actually give to another company, like for a franchise, right? So someone else wants to start up something like So Help, and Kevin says, sure, let's do that. Here are my procedures and protocols. You can actually provide those things to someone else, transfer them in exchange for value. An ebook would be actually material capital, even though it's not physical. You have a PDF that can be sold, it can be transferred, and so thinking outside of just building and furniture when it comes to what does your business have in non-physical things that can be owned, transferred. So podcasts, videos, that you can think of as material capital. Now, let me just say, This has nothing to do with, if you're in the U.S., IRS or taxes, right? So don't for a second think that you could take this idea of these different forms of capital and use them when it comes to to your taxes and that sort of thing. But when you're thinking about the value of your business, you need, and so you need to think about these different things. So I can take an ebook, which is non-physical material capital. I can either sell it and receive financial capital, right? So now I've exchanged material capital for financial. Or I could take it, I could give it away in exchange for an email, building social capital, but you're exchanging material capital for social. You could take that ebook, you could sell it and get a financial capital, but then you could also, someone reads it, they post something on a social website. Now you've also gained social capital from this. And then that person maybe even, and here's the thing, right? People are so afraid with ebooks. What happens when someone downloads it and maybe they just give it away? No one will come and buy it again, right? Okay, so that person, let's just say, which doesn't happen very often, but let's just say you are going to have a certain percentage. When that person who paid for it the first time takes it and gives a copy to someone else, you're actually building what's called spiritual capital, which is evangelizing your brand, your ideas, and your business, which actually comes right back to you, because that next person reads the book and says, wow, I never thought of that. Let me go to the website and check out this business. And so you didn't get a direct sale there, but you are actually doing less with more. You created one thing, a material capital, an ebook, and you are actually using it in ways to create multiple forms of capital, all through this idea of I'm putting out, I'm being helpful, I'm going to share what I know, my intellectual capital, through an ebook with you, and I get all these paybacks. And maybe that person who got that ebook for free ends up either going to your website or starting to listen to a podcast. You've just potentially brought in another customer. So thinking of it that way. Intellectual capital, just talked about a little bit, but we tend to think of that as like knowledge or information, or IPR, right? And people again get really worked up with this idea of I have to legally protect what I have, and there's a place and time for that, most definitely. But if you open your mind to what intellectual capital can mean for your business and how you already have it and how you can utilize it and transfer then into other forms of capital, you might be more interested in doing what I'm doing, which is take an open source approach to it, because I build value through that much more than I would if I did it in a closed system. So when you think of intellectual capital, a lot of times people think of what knowledge is in your business. What knowledge do you have, or any other your other partners that are helping start the business? But intellectual capital in your business also includes your employees, right, or contractors, or anyone else that you're doing business with. It includes your sponsors. They have intellectual capital that is actually brought into your business through that relationship. Your suppliers, again, intellectual capital that is actually being adding to the value of your business through integration. And then of course, one that's often overlooked, but not in the Lean Startup community. Lean Startup community is really great about valuing the intellectual capital of your customers. So thinking of, what do my customers know? Because you know what? They know what they want. So let me connect and let me build a relationship so I can glean and put that into the business. And so you can use, just like Kevin's so helpful business, the business itself and the website, but also just the foundation of helpfulness to bring that intellectual capital from these other individuals, all these other edges that are in your business. And as we talked about in the beginning, the intellectual capital of your competitors, and how to leverage that through a foundation of helpfulness, through and again, the idea of you're sharing certain things, process that allows you to actually make changes and improve what you are doing for your customers through, I'm sorry, I should say, a cooperative competitor relationship that can exist and actually thrive. So, think about that intellectual capital and all those different edges that actually exist. Mindfulness actually helps bring that into your business. But one thing to remember is intellectual capital or knowledge and ideas by themselves are actually take action until something is done with that knowledge or those ideas. And so you need to think about, how do I take that intellectual capital and then different places within my business. So, start thinking about how you can share what you know and start incorporating, share some of my intellectual capital, because as a result, again, think that sort of that ebook, that's the ebook itself, the PDF is material capital. But what is in that ebook, the knowledge, is intellectual capital. And so for about how that one ebook, has all these other forms of capital that come in as a result. So think about how you can actually inject helpfulness and combine these things by doing less but with more as a result. So the ones that I want to talk a little bit more about include social, living, spiritual, cultural, and experiential, because I think folks don't necessarily think about those as much, and these exist already in your business. So social capital, and of course lean startup, a lot of people are right on with this, and big companies are slowly coming on board with what social capital actually can do for you. So injecting a helpful technique that's separate from, rather than integrating in your business ethos, when it comes to social capital that you're trying to obtain, often comes off as disingenuous, as sort of salesy, and dishonest. And and so if it's just something that you inject, it seems very unnatural, and it's not part of your permanence of culture. But if you think about it, how then being helpful through social capital can help capital, you start seeing it in a totally different way. And living capital is something that may not exist in your business yet. So living capital, we tend to think of as things like that are actually living things. We think of plants or animals or soil or water is living capital. And you're thinking, well, okay, I have an online business. What the heck does living capital have to do with? But living capital is much more than that. Anything that is living has certain characteristics. It reproduces, it grows, it changes, it evolves, it interacts. That's what you want your business to do. Yeah.
Hey, Jen. Yeah, hey, Jen, can I just to jump in here for quick questions? I know we probably, I guess we have about 10 minutes left here. And one of the things that as I'm watching this, like, is jumping out at me is that, like, you're kind of, by bringing these up, you're causing me to reset sort of how I'm thinking about what I do every day, right? So it's like, oh, there are all these other things out, these other assets that I have that I've never even thought about. Are you going to be able to talk a little bit about kind of hey, this is what you actually need to go and do? Because I find, at least like in the tech and the startup community, people are very sort of task action oriented. So it's I just wonder if there's any way you can talk about, hey, these are this is what I'm doing with my business, or this is how what's kind of the next step, or what people would take to move to start implementing some of this. And I don't know if that's something you're going to cover
sure.
in a lesson or not, but I just want to make sure that didn't get shortchanged with the amount of time we have left.
No, thanks for interjecting, because when I have the full PowerPoint screen on, I can't see the time on my computer, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
So you know what? I mean, let's take these ideas and go with how do you do less with more? And so edge analysis and stacking of functions, and how you actually start taking action with this stuff, right? So when you think of edge analysis, we talked about what some of those edges might be. And again, it's where any two or more things come together, things, people, or energy, and they touch one another. Think about your patterned edge in your business. Do you have a pyramid sort of pattern? Do you have a line and block pattern to how you are thinking about the edges in your business? Do you have a concentric circle or do you have other patterns where you have spiraling, right? Where you think about how these things are interconnected, how these different players, all these edges in your business interconnect with one another. So actually stop and take a look at how you think about your business pattern. And if you were to take and put on your business onto a piece of paper in a line and block chart, with you at the top, and if so, then you are minimizing your edges, because that's just you connecting with whoever's on the next level on your line and block chart, instead of thinking about how you can actually redesign your business together. So that's one thing that you can do. And it sounds so basic, but just stopping to think about that, and especially if you're in the early stages. So identify not just challenges, but then solutions, but also opportunities that you are not yet capitalizing on. So thinking back to those forms of capital, thinking back to all of the edges in your business, and maybe even like making a list of what those edges might be, including people and technology and things, right? And where are you actually, having those edges touch? Where is there a long edge? And then where are you not doing that? So where are opportunities that you're missing? And then think about the idea that every single edge
Hey Jen, what do you mean when you
Yeah.
say edges? What do you mean by edge? I think I'm not quite sure what, like maybe an example of that, or
Sure. So that's anywhere that your business touches anything or anyone. So that is where your business, that could be you personally, which represents your business, interact with, again, customers, suppliers, producers, contractors. That's you, and which represents your business, and the edges between you and all those other people. But you know what? There's edges between those people as well. And so, how are you using helpfulness to connect things like your producer and their intellectual capital, right? If you have, or supplier, I should say, right? If you have some sort of hard product with your customers. So does it all have to go through you and you just connect to these other people, or is there a way for you to think about your business and how you connect these other people together, all through then the culture of your business, which is cultural capital, and people still see that interaction as part of you and your business and that value that you can provide. But so edges include the people, but edges also include anything from your business that touches those people as well, right? So your website, a podcast, maybe you do videos, on a consistent basis and you put those out. That is an edge. That podcast meets with your listener. And so that is an edge. Now, are you actually thinking about using so are you just putting out that podcast, or is that edge, a two-way? Are you actually to receive information, not just give information? Your website, have you thought about how to make that edge where people connect with your business through that website as helpful as possible to people? So thinking about, and then, so there's this idea of also interdepartmental. Now, people think of, and these are sort of like big business terms, but even in a quote-unquote one-man shop, these departments exist. It may all be with you because you're the one person founding this, right? But so marketing, marketing, where your business message meets potential customers is an edge. And that's where you generate interest, right? So, versus your sales edge. And that's where a lot of people try and inject helpfulness, is I just want to do it to make the sale. But if you really think about how can I market my message using helpfulness, how can I utilize my intellectual capital, my maybe non-physical material capital, my cultural capital that I've built in my business through marketing, through my marketing edge, with not just my customers, but with anyone else. How am I marketing my product also to my suppliers, to my contractors? How am I marketing my product to to anyone that comes in and is part of your business? And so you can think about these different interdepartmental edges that exist, and actually those edges should interact with each other. And when you think of helpfulness, just as, sales is what a lot of people think of, or customer service, right? But helpfulness can be injected into training as well. And so that's kind of what I mean by edge, is that there's all these different ways to look at what are actually the components of your business. It's much more than you and a service or product. And then how can I sort of elongate? How can I make these other things meet in more effective ways? So it's first of all just going through and taking a look at what do you actually have in your business, because you have most or all of these things. You have most or all of the capital that I talked about. But are you doing anything with it? Is the question. And then
Hey, Jen,
when you're thinking about doing something with it, you want to think of stacking of functions. Yeah.
Yeah, just jump. We got about 2 minutes left, so I'm just going to put that out there to see how you want to wrap things up here. So.
Sure. So we'll wrap it up here with the idea of stacking of functions. So when you think about these different edges, these different components, which I have listed there, and then you think of these different functions, you want to create a living business, right? And so take one action that impacts multiple components and or multiple functions in your business. And ideally, every single time that you make that impacts a component of your business, so every component should be serving 2 or more functions. So all these different people, the departments, every single form of capital should be doing sustaining and growing, or sustaining and evolving. And also vice versa, that every function should be served by 2 or more components. Again, you're thinking of sort of an ecosystem. How do these things interact with one another? And then, going back to some of these questions, and then how can you take this and actually evaluate what your business really looks like and what value is already there for you, and how you can then design a business grounded in helpfulness that connects all these things together. Finally, taking anything that you've learned or contemplated, challenging it, trying it out for yourself, and then sharing that knowledge with other people. Take that intellectual capital and build that edge. So that's it. Do you guys have any questions?
I don't, Jen. Thank you so much. I guess the big question I have then is if people want to talk to you a little bit more about their own situation and get some advice from you, how can they get a hold of you?
So let me see if I can get this off here. Back to my picture, maybe. So if folks want to reach me, you can email at jen@permakids.com. But you can also, if you want to talk over the phone, of course, I've got a So Helpful profile, so sohelpful.me, and then Jen Mendez, all one word, JEN. And so you can always reach out that way. I'd love to talk and hear your feedback and share anything else that I know and how I can help you.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Jen. I really appreciate you taking the time to put this together for all of us. Congratulations on all the success of what you're doing with PermaKids. I think you're an inspiration to a lot of us, and thanks for taking the time. I'll go ahead and say goodbye to everyone, then we can stay on and chat for a little bit.